Okay, as we were discussing, generally you have two ways of trying to find out the MPP point. So MPP point is basically most probable point where the reliability failure occurs, and that is the optimum value of based on the beta value you want to find it out. Now, as I was saying, that if you look at the optimization problems in both the methods, they give you the same answer. In one case you fixed the diameter of the circle, in another case you try to basically find out a normalized distance such that depending on the value of beta you are able to reach the MPP point. So if you check here, for the first case, this is the distance. So you keep the distance fixed. Consider it's in a Cartesian coordinate, you keep the distance fixed and minimize the functional value such that, because it will be the tangent, maybe tangent at different points, you take the minimum of that, because that is the most probable point, and based on that you proceed. And in the other case, if you want to minimize the distance of coverage as the boundary shifts. So this is what you do. And the second part of GU is equal to 0 is actually, if you remember the functional form which I had written, was this. You had probability G, I am not writing XPD, so on and so forth, so it is greater than some B, I am not using the suffixes also, is greater than beta. So what you do is G minus B is greater than 0, is greater than beta, beta doesn't change, you convert this into U space such that is greater than or is equal to beta, and this is what you want to minimize. Subject to the constraints, this is subject to the constraints such that this becomes greater than this. This is exactly what you are doing for the constraints condition. Now this most probable point of failure, as I said, you solve this in the U space, find out U, do the inverse mapping, come to X space, find out the X, optimize. Check the optimization value of f of x1 minus f of x2, that mod is less than equal to epsilon, whatever the epsilon value is. If it is true, stop and report those x values and the f of x. If not true, optimize using any optimization technique. Once you reach that optimal value, next stage, convert the new x into u, do this transformation, either PME or RI method, again reverse back and continue this whole process. So the inner and outer loop, which is basically the optimization stage and the reliability stage, are decoupled from each other. So they can be run parallelly. So as you are doing the optimization one, you also try to check as the answer is reached. So that means at each step you do not have to basically run both the loops. Only once the optimization is reached in the X space, then only you convert into U and then do the optimization. Again, once you complete there, revert back, do the inverse mapping in X space, do again optimization, and then only proceed. So these do not have to be run as a concentric loops. You basically decouple them. So hence these two decoupled loops are applied one after other in sequence, which means that this decoupled loop method does not conduct the expensive, because expensive in the sense of time complexity or with respect to the space complexity. If you are doing that optimization, you need to basically save the matrices or the vectors whichever is there. So you save on those and then proceed accordingly till you reach the optimal result. In recent times, this sequential optimization reliability assessment or sequential optimization method or sequential quadratic methods are being used very heavily, where you have such reliability constraints which you need to basically find out. Now remember, in this problem, the objective function doesn't have any probability. They are non-deterministic, which is true, but your constraints are more probabilistic. Based on this, you want to shift the boundary, find out the MPP point in the U space, revert back to the X space, and basically continue it as it is. Now I have tried to basically draw it in such a way that you will understand. So if you remember the diagram which was there, the green one. So these are the outer and inner levels of reliability which you want to do. So if you zoom in, see it there, I am only drawing one of the constraints. It gives you this, where if you look carefully, the mean value, which is the dotted one or the blue one, has a dotted one which is the normal distribution. So if it's a normal distribution, it will be equally spaced both on the outside and the inside. So these are concentric circles. So when you find out the loci of the center, so these circles would be expanding or contracting depending on the reliability level. If they are non-normal, I have tried to draw these bold red lines and blue lines. So they would basically give you the probabilities based on what type of distributions you are trying to use. It can be extreme value, Gumbel distribution, Pareto distribution, and then when you find out the reliabilities, they would be just based on the simple fact that you are able to do the one-to-one mapping corresponding to the fact that it is a cumulative distribution which you want, and then you use the conditional distribution values and then try to optimize. So the reliability based method, which is for the PMA and the RIA method which are there, which is under, I am considering one of the methods which is sequential optimization. You continue doing this till you are going more and more inside the feasible region, and then try to find out the point which is most probable point both on X space and U space. Now what happens is, actually how you start out the problem is this. So if you remember the initial problem, and I'll note down where the changes are. If you note down the initial problem, X is probabilistic, D is deterministic, P is the set of parameters which are external, which are also probabilistic. So obviously X PR has some distribution, and similarly XP would be in the constraints also. Now if you look here, and when you check the converted problem based on which you are going to start, they are exactly the same, but with very few important changes. What are the changes? I will tell you. So these X and P would be replaced by their corresponding values, and this probability will also vanish. That means when you are starting. So if you look at here, this X gets replaced by its mean value, because that is the central line based on which you are going to find out the probabilities. D remains as it is because it is deterministic. Similarly, P is also replaced by its mean value. So obviously you will ask that from where do I get the mean value of X, from where do I get the mean values of P? They are basically obtained from the past data. So if you have if you do not have the mean values, you basically consider the sample mean as the best estimate, and you can proceed with your problems accordingly. Now when you come to the case of the values for the constraints, so these values, so this X MPP means the most probable point in this space based on the fact you are optimized there in the U space. So you, again I am repeating, you start with X, revert to and forth between the X space and the U space in these two rooms. Once you stop, the initial values based on which you are going to start your optimization problem is the corresponding X based on the fact you have already reached the optimality in the non-deterministic space. So those are mentioned as X suffix MPP, because there would be a U MPP in that other room, plus P MPP would is also a corresponding value for U for P in the MPP in the U space, and then you continue. Only one thing, so I think I should have written X MPP in this constraint also. So this means what you are doing is that you have been able to remove probability, replace with them the most probable point for the constraint, and for the mean values you start the optimization with the mean values and then continue doing the optimization. So this is basically where you will start the optimization and it will be proceeding one step at a time. Now I'll just consider the robust optimization framework. Now the main difference between robust optimization and reliability based framework is that in reliability framework you need to consider some distribution for x and p. In robust optimization you need not consider any distribution. You need to consider a nominal value, which in general you consider the nominal value as the mean value of the set of random variables, nothing else. So they are distribution free. You consider a nominal value, and the perturbations means to which values of plus and minus that nominal value will fluctuate would depend on what is the variance of the data. So it doesn't depend on the distribution as such, because you do not know the distribution. If you do not know the distribution, you will have a sample. If you have a sample, you will have a standard error, and if you have a standard error, you will consider that as the perturbation, like an atom vibrating according to its mean value. So that mean value is the sample mean, and the perturbations, whether higher on the right or lower on the left or vice versa, would be considered as the standard error for the sample, and you will basically start your optimization problem. While in reliability method you consider underlying distribution to be true, or else you would not have been able to do that, because you consider capital F of x, then capital F of x2 given x1, and so on and so forth, based on this which you proceed. So the idea of robust optimization is an interesting method of handling optimization with uncertain data. Again, uncertainty is there with respect to p, and external there's white noise also. So we'll consider them as variables which are under control, which you can measure with a certain uncertainty probability. It doesn't mention anything about distribution. And there are other sets of variables, you know their uncertainty, in the sense they are uncertain, but you do not know their actual values, whatever it is. So in general, uncertainty in the data which is utilized in optimization problem do exist in the real world due to measurement error and estimation error. So we'll consider one set which are errors occurring due to my own problem of measurement, and there are some set of values which we cannot measure because they are undeterministic, probabilistic, and we do not have any information of them. Now when you basically consider the robust optimization, very simply I'll tell you that we consider a nominal value. Now your question would be, how do we consider the nominal value? The nominal value is basically the point from where you will start. We very simply consider that as a mean and then basically proceed. Point 1. Point number 2, you also want to know what is the perturbation. So how much perturbation you should do. There also we consider the standard error from the sample as the perturbation. Now it may be true that the perturbations on the higher values and the lower values, that is on the positive side and the negative side, can be different. It is fine. So what we generally try to do, that is just to give us a simple solution, we take the minimum of that perturbation and then it's basically proceed with a solution. Now when you basically convert, so this is the idea. So you basically start with the perturbation, have that perturbations, and then map it onto the standard normal phase. Now the background of converting the perturbations and the nominal values, when you do that in robust optimization, is also the same underlying principle based on which you are doing the reliability part. So what we have in the perturbation case, there is some distribution which we do not know. So there will be capital F of x. So what we consider is that capital F of x, whether it is a scalar or a vector or some joint distribution, whatever it is given, we'll consider that capital F of x is basically mapped onto the standard normal space. So in this case, we mapped from x to u. U was univariate between 0 and 1, but in this case we will map it from x to the standard normal space, such that in both the cases we are trying to utilize the same fact, that the CDF values, minimum value is 0, maximum value is 1, and for any set A and B, it is a monotonically increasing function. Based on that, we try to solve the problem. That's the general essence. Now, when you basically consider the robust optimization, what you have is that you will basically have these nominal values for x, the decision variables, some nominal values for measurement errors, external measurement errors, and some nominal values for external errors which are not under your control, for which you have no information. For that, you will try to utilize the past data in order to basically predict. Say for example, you are trying to basically build design a car. So your decision variables may be the material you are going to use. So what is the Young's modulus, or what is the, say for example, the strength of material of the outer casing of the car, or what is the strength of the door. So obviously in that case, the things which are under control, you may think that speed is under my control, but there is some fluctuation. So maximum speed can be 120 plus minus 30 kilometers per hour. While other things which are not under control may be, say for example, what would be the wind velocity, or what would be the condition of the road. So we'll basically assume some data from the past, and based on that basically manage the nominal values for those errors which are not under our control, and basically plan it accordingly. So there is one set of white noise which we have no information, one set of undeterministic values which are known to us, in the sense nominal values are known, and we plan it. So underlying that, we do not consider any distribution as such. But I will mention, when we solve the problems for the finance, we do consider some distribution in order to make our life simple. So not that it gives us bad results, but it gives us a decent result in order to solve. So in the robust framework, the problem I have basically given the outlook of the problem, the way the problem will look. In the reliability framework, what I did was basically convert x into mu x, p into mu p with a certain distribution, and I converted the probability into the deterministic case by replacing x and p by the MPP points where you basically converge. While in the case of the robust one, I have not considered any changes which are being done for the constraints. So obviously these constraints, when you combine both of them, this would basically be x MPP, p MPP, x MPP, p MPP without the probabilities, and obviously here there would be more further changes. So what are these further changes? So consider the optimization problem, if you remember, had different f of x for I is equal to 1 to capital I. So I am converting that, it is divided into two sets where the intersection is null set, where I1 of them are maximization, I2 of them are minimization, and I basically put a bound. So these bounds are basically given by some sense of robustness I want in my answer. So if I want a robustness of value of T1, I1, T11, T12, T13, so on and so forth for the maximization problem, similarly I will have some robustness for the minimization problem. So what I want, if you check, I want to optimize, maximize, minimize would basically be done accordingly, where this function was actually here. So I bring it to the constraint such that I try to maximize the Ti value such that f of x is always greater than that. Yes.
So like in manufacturing process cases, you measure the robustness based on the sensitivity to insensitivity to the changes in the control variables. Like uncontrollable variables. So here also you mean
we are doing like this, yeah, something like that. So consider you have only one variable. So what you do is that, consider this is a normal distribution. This is a normal distribution, and consider there is a value. So we want to basically have f of x is less than equal to x or greater than 2 else, whatever it is, and this x value is given here. So what we do is that we either maximize or minimize depending on the problem. So if we are maximizing, we try to forcefully push it onto the right such that the overall area covered onto the right or the left automatically gets optimized. So if you check, when you are trying to optimize T1 based on the fact that the functional value is greater than T1, increasing this also increases this, and decreasing T2 also basically decreases the second function. So you are trying to basically take a fixed value, optimize such that you either push the functional value onto the right or to the left depending on the optimization problem. So this part with the robust optimization point, and these two would basically with the reliability point. So when you actually have that problem converted, so this is XMPP, this is XMPP, and they would basically be replaced actually by the mean values. So mean value of x here, mean value of p here, mean value of x here, mean value of p here. When you want to start, some T1 and T2 would be taken depending on the reliability value which you want to have, a robust value you want to have, and these probabilities would not be there. They would be replaced by XMPP, PMPP, XMPP, PMPP. Start that, do the robust optimization on the reliability point, and if it is the reliability point, obviously you will be converting from the X space to the U space and considering till you reach the optimality at that case. So if there is only single optimization problem, maximization one, this would not be there. So there is only T1. So you will try to maximize T1 subject to F, only one F of mu x d mu p being greater than T. You will maximize that, and in the constraints they are converted into a deterministic one and you proceed. That's all. So if it is a multi-objective framework, have two robust framework models, apply any multi-objective problem, do it continuously, and also do the reliability part and obtain the results. So there are no proofs, asymptotic proofs for that, but actually we check these answers are much better if we had the deterministic framework, which I will try to show now. So if you consider the problem as such, it will look like this. So initially you had the boundaries, now you want to basically put them by a robust frame, in the robust framework where the perturbation sets are unknown to you. So I have drawn this green one as and in a very simple, in a very general sense, while the diagram inside, which is the violet and the red one, I have drawn them purposefully to be a circle in order to make our life simple, but technically they would not be a circle because the underlying distributions by themselves are not normal. So obviously you will have non-normal distribution in place of the red circle, because if you project this, the marginal distributions are not normal. Similarly, if you project that one, the other blue point, so obviously that is not normal. So the overall space which you have when they combine would be something to do with the diagram which I have already seen in the reliability sense. Now with this background, I will just try to give you the solution of one of the problems. So this is a very simple multi-objective problem which we have for the finance. So consider we have weights W for n number of financial assets. I am considering very simply stocks, no bonds, no options, no futures, nothing. So let us make our life simple as possible. So W's and N's are vectors, the size being, for W size being n cross 1, capital N cross 1. Wi's are the weights, capital V is the variance covariance matrix for the n assets, M is the vector of returns for the n assets, N is the number of scrips or the assets which you have. You have some fixed return star over which you want your total portfolio return to be, and risk star being the some value of risk below which you want the risk for the portfolio to be. Now these MV are the vectors or the matrices which you have for the mean value and the covariance variance matrix are obtained from the data based on which you are trying to do. So you already have the data for that, or you basically assume some data, consider those values and then proceed. Now the problem is like this: you minimize the risk of the portfolio, you maximize the return on the portfolio, and the return has to be greater than some return star which is fixed by you depending on your level of competence, level of risk perception or your risk return profile, and the risk value is less than equal to some risk star. So this return star can be 10% for me and risk star can be 5% for me. So it will be different for different person depending on the risk appetite. I consider obviously the sum of the weights Wi should be 1, and I am basically keeping it as simple as possible such that the weights are all between 0 and 1. So now this is the general problem. So now I am basically structuring the problem with these nomenclature, and capital N is the number of assets, capital T is the total time framework based on which I am going to collect the data and then break it into out sample, in sample, and then compare my results. So in sample will be the case where I take the data and test and find out the values, and then from the out sample I test how my model is doing, what is the robustness. Small wi's are the weights, so values are W1 to small w capital N, and I am considering that weights for each are bounded between Wi minimum and Wi maximum. So in the case where there is no minimum value, no maximum value, Wi min and Wi max for all the stocks, all the scripts would be 0 and 1 respectively. And I consider Ri as the random variable representing the rate of return for the stocks, which is given as the last bullet point, and Rp is the return threshold required by the investor. So basically it is that Rp star which I was talking about. Now if I pause and if I want to find out the model in a very simplistic sense, this is a multi-objective with deterministic constraint, and we solve it using any multi-objective optimization. Solve our problem and the problem is done. Now consider that you consider a multi-objective, but what happens if the constraints are probabilistic? In the sense that first constraint is probability of return being greater than return star with some beta, and the probability of the risk being less than risk star with some beta. So those would basically be decided by the factor and what you think the risk return perception is in the market. So the problem comes like here, all of us have the same data, so data is fixed for all of us, but now what we are going to, and obviously the risk free interest rate and all these things are same in the market. Now what is important for us to know is that beta 1 and beta 2 values would be different for different of the investors. So why so? Because if my risk perception is different, so my beta 1 and beta 2 values will be different from what yours are, and so on and so forth. So we need to consider that in order to model the problem accordingly. So now what are the other variables? Because I skipped to the initial PPT, so let me continue the nomenclature explanation. Thus R suffix IT are the returns for each stock for each day. So if I have 50 stocks and if the time period is 1 year, each day price is being calculated, I'll basically have I is from 1 to 50 and T being 1 to 240, considering there are 240 number of trading days in the market. Then I will have the correlation coefficient again, which is rho ij, which I can calculate from the data. This sigma star p whole square is the threshold for the risk based on which I am going to invest for that, which is for the portfolio. So that would basically be my perception of risk. So as my perception of return was given by RP star, hence my perception of risk is also given by sigma star p square. Now the third last point is a little bit different. What I am considering is that I am considering the standard deviation of the standard deviation also. Because if I am considering a probabilistic variance is perturbed as per the robust optimization. So I need to see what is the perturbation for the standard deviation. That's why I use a variable which is basically standard deviation of the standard deviation, based on which I am going to find out the perturbation. Similarly, then once I basically have that problem, what I do is that I do a multi-stage problem for each and every period time. It's not a dynamic programming. I just very simply do a multi-stage problem. So I consider A as the matrix which consists of the returns for each and every stock for each and every day. So if you look at the topmost row, the values are R11, R21 till Rn1, which is the return for each stock for the first day. If you look at the second value, this is R12 till Rn2, which is the return of each stock 1 to n for the second day. Similarly, if I go for the whole time frame, it is the return for stock 1 to n for the 10th day, the last day. And the B value which I have, I am considering these are the new thresholds which are happening for each and every day as I keep re-evaluating my portfolio, whether I should sell the stocks, buy the stocks. It is a little bit theoretical values based on which you are proceeding, considering that if I sell and buy a particular stock each and every day, obviously there would be brokerage charges. But I am not considering that for the time being. I am just simply considering that these thresholds are changing. So if I do not want the thresholds to be changed, so the vector B would have, say for example, values T in number, capital T in number, where all the values are same. Or if I want to reevaluate my portfolio out of the T framework 3 number of times, so there will be 3 different values. So I can basically make it accordingly. So what I am also considering are these. So okay, I am just considering in order to make my the understanding actually as it is. So P are the percentage of the transaction cost for buying a stock. Q are the percentage of transaction cost for selling the stock. They are not the same. W plus and W minus, which is the third and the fourth column, the vectors which are given, these are the n vectors of stock, number of stocks purchased. So if I don't purchase any stock, W plus is all 0 values, and if W minuses are I am buying about 20% for each stock, W minus would be all 0.2 for all the cells. And this W naught is basically the initial value or the nominal value of which I mentioned for the robust optimization case, for the values based on which I am trying to do the optimization. Q is the variance covariance matrix, which was V as mentioned here, and these values also can be found out from the data. So from the data we would know N, we would have T, W's we do not know, W minimum and W maximum we know, we can set it for ourselves, RIs we know, RP star we know. So till now actually values which you do not know and we have to find out are the WIs, what are the weights. We know RIT, we know sigma I, we know rho ij, we also know sigma square P star, we know the standard deviation, we know matrix A, we know the vector B. So actually what is the problem is that we do not know WIs, and also we do not know in the very practical sense the distributions of different variables. So the main, yes.
Sir, so basically we are trying to find out how much wealth we should put in each of the stocks.
Yes.
Simultaneously optimized by both of them.
Right.
What is the purpose of assigning the weights to the stock?
Weights, basically I want to find out what is the output of my total value of the asset which I have, total money which I have, what is the value I would invest in the stocks initially, and how the weights would evolve as the risk return profile changes.
Over the period.
Yes, yes. I want to reevaluate my portfolio, but as I am reevaluating my portfolio, I should have the information on the market also. That market is non-deterministic. If it is non-deterministic, it is changing. So I am trying to model that as a reliability framework or robust framework model. That's all. So I would consider the returns are not known to me deterministically. I will consider a distribution. The standard deviations are also not known to me deterministically. So I will consider different distribution if the distributions are known to me. But the issue is like this. So from basic statistics we know that if the normal distribution is true, then the mean value is distributed normally and the standard deviation of the variance has a chi-square distribution. But what if the distributions of the stocks are not normal, if they are extreme value distribution? And if we do not apply the central limit theorem, so we neither know the distribution of mu or r, which is the underlying return for the stocks, and we do not know the standard deviation distribution also, which is the standard deviation of the returns of the stocks. So these values of sigma 11, sigma 12, sigma 1n are the values, actual values, and you have to basically replace them with the distribution. So that's why I am saying if normal distribution is true, we know the distribution of our r's and sigmas. If normal distribution is not true, we do not know anything, we replace them by the nominal values, which is the mean values. Now the problem is like this. So if you see, the problem is very simply matched like this. You look at the second optimization problem is minimization of the risk, which is weights multiplied by the variance covariance matrix multiplied by the weights also. So it is basically that summation which we have when we consider the variance covariance matrix. So the variance covariance matrix is given by this. So this is modeled as W transpose Q W. So if you expand it, so this is a vector. The Q you have assumed, W you basically start with, and similarly the W transpose is also given. Now the first optimization problem is very simple. It's basically a simple input-output value, a flow diagram. So if you consider the initially RIWI is the return of the portfolio, and if the stocks you sell, so the percentage sold is given by, because why it is negative for both, because for both selling and buying you have to pay some money. You cannot go in the brokerage cost. So P transpose W plus and Q transpose W minus are the prices which you pay for buying and the prices which you pay for selling. So what you are considering is that your returns are there, and from that you are losing both for selling and buying. So you are trying to compensate by the returns, but you have to basically pay some upfront money to the brokerage or the broker for both buying and selling particular stocks in some numbers. It can be converted into numbers also, N, which I am not doing. N means not the total number of stocks, it basically depends on number of stocks which you buy and sell for each different asset. Now if you check, the constraints are very simple. The first constraint is that you want the return of the portfolio A into W to be greater than some B fixed value. Second value is the return of the total portfolio in the weight multiplied the return terms is greater than RP star, which you have set for yourself. This RP star is a value which you give. The third constraint is that the variance of that portfolio is less than sigma square star, which again you have set for yourself. The fourth value is basically the inflow outflow diagram. So initially you had W, and then you buy W plus, you sell W minus. So if you basically put that equation into place, it basically, if you start with W naught, so from W naught what you do is that you buy some, sell some. So if you take W plus and W minus to the right hand side, it will be W naught plus W plus minus W minus, that will give you the next stage W's. So you basically go it accordingly. So the values which are there, actually this should have been like this: W naught, W plus at first stage, W as minus at the first stage, and this value would be given by W1, which is for second time period. Then at second time period again, in that case W1 will come here, then it will be W plus for second stage, W minus for second stage, then you have W2. You will basically proceed accordingly. So I am basically taking a stage wise. Then also the weights are between minimum and maximum, and W plus and W minus always are greater than 0, greater or equal to 0. Now I take the data set for 3 years and 1 month, which is from January 2012 to 2015, for the following: for the Bombay Stock Exchange, for the German Stock Exchange, which is DAX, for Dow Jones Industrial Average, for Hong Kong, which is HSI index, and STI, which is the Singapore index. So we take a window. Okay, now the issue is that how we do the simulation work. So what we do is that we break down the whole time frame into windows. So into windows, in the sense we do want to do the simulation, and we want to do some bootstrapping to find out what is the mean value, because we do not have any information about the nominal values, we do not have any information of the distribution. So we would want to basically find out something to do with the distribution. What we do is that if you look at the diagram, so that's the total number of days of the prices which you have. So you break down into length of windows of capital L, and each L has an overlap which is given by O. So the L can be, window size can be either 150 days, can be 3 weeks, can be 2 weeks. There is no fixed rule for that. But from a statistics point of view, there are some books or papers which basically says what should be the window size in order to overcome multicollinearity and all these things. So I take a window size of 150 and an overlap, I do not, 50 days overlap. So basically I repeat that. So what I am doing is that for the first 150 days I take the mean, second 150 days again I take the mean, which are basically random by itself. I plot them. Once I plot them, I will have a mean of the mean that I take as the average. I will have a standard deviation of those mean, I take that as a perturbation, and then solve my problem. That's the main task. If I had the distribution, I would have solved it, but I don't have the distribution. So I'll do it for all the DAX 30 or the Dow Jones Industrial Average number of stocks, or BSE 30 or NSE 50, whatever it is. And then you will basically find out the nominal values and the variance or the perturbation, and you will basically repeat it 25 times. That means you concatenate the data set, like put it one after the other, jumble it, like you do the mixing of jhalmuri. So you basically put it in a row, jumble it, and take 150 data points one at a time. 150, then 150, 150, 150 with a overlap, and then you take the mean. So plot the means, find out the mean of the means, put it and find out the nominal values. Now window length of 5 days, okay, we did different type of window sizes for different bootstrapping. So how many bootstrap you take? It can be 500, 1000, 2000. So more you take, obviously central limit theorem will slowly start taking control. So when you okay, now how do you solve the problem? So once you have the data, if you go back to this problem, so consider the problem like this. These are the objective values, and considering the reliability framework, so consider this is deterministic. There is a probability here, there is a probability here. So the probability of this being greater than R star P is beta 1. Probability of this part being less than equal to sigma square star being greater than beta 2. And these are just very simply some constraints which you have put. So what you do is that if you are solving the reliability based problem, first, so in this case W1 would have a distribution, R would have a distribution, and if there are other variables which you do not know. So for our case, we took very simply this. This R distribution we do not know, so we take the nominal values. Perturbations we do not know, we take the standard deviation of the perturbations. Now we do not know the distribution of Wi's. So to start with, we took a very simple univariate distribution. That means I am considering that I will basically invest some proportions of the stocks. We will basically take some proportions of the stocks, proportion of the weights which you are going to invest in each stock is uniform. So if I invest 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, 50% till 100%, I will consider their probabilities to be even for all. This is just an assumption. So from that I will have the mean values because the distribution is known. I will have a variance. So I consider that mean value as the nominal value or the mean value based on which we want to start off the distribution. So obviously the mean value for Ri which I want to find out would basically be that mu x you remember in the reliability problem. So the mean values would be the nominal values for Ri which I took for the bootstrapping. So the averages of the averages are here. And when I take this mean values of Wi's, it will be the mean value of a uniform discrete distribution between 0 and 1. And once I solve the multi-objective problem, I'll get the first point which is the deterministic point, which is the red dot. Convert into the U frame using those two methods which I already have, or that RIA method or the PMA method, where either the constraint is reaching the boundary of the reliability or the reliability is expanding. From that you find out the U star, again map back into the X space where you will give a new sets of R's and the weights, and you basically proceed accordingly till you are able to reach optimality. So obviously I need to basically check. So I can check different levels of reliability. So I take one set of reliability and then I find out the weights and then I find the risk return framework for the portfolio. So the diagram comes like this. It is not a straight line, this is a collection of points because they are non-deterministic. So if I want to find out, so if I run it, say for example 2 million times, 3 million times, there would be concentration at the point, but this is the overall surface based on which I can find one risk return. So my risk is this, my return would be this. So depending on that I can find it out. Now your question would be yes.
According to this diagram, if my risk is increasing, my return is also increasing.
It is increasing.
Sir, risk increasing, return, how will I explain this behavior? Risk is increasing, so that it should not be linearly dependent.
It is not linearly dependent.
It's almost, we can get a best fit straight line here. Because if risk increases, there might be chances my return becomes shaky.
Shaky means?
Shaky means it may,
You become nervous.
it may increase or it may decrease also. That's why my risk is there.
So it's
If my
there.
returns are also increasing and my risk is increasing, I am not bothered about risk. क्या फर्क पड़ता है? Return तो मेरा बढ़ते ही जाएगा जितना भी risk हो. It's like that only.
I think they will be better to answer.
If you don't take risk, then you never get return from financial market.
higher the risk.
Because this is one sentence.
Probability of loss is very higher.
No, I am not saying it. They are the best person to answer. So your risk return profile is this. Now the peculiarity of the problem which I'll show you in a 3D diagram is that change the betas, you will have different such envelopes.
Just one question. It's a Pareto field.
Yes, I completely forgot. In this confusion, I forgot to ask what was your question.
The points are not all the points are not non-dominating.
No, they would not be.
But how it comes?
Because you are taking from a distribution that will have a mean value. No, if you draw the Pareto front, then it will be a non.
Not the Pareto front.
No, it's not a Pareto front. It is a risk return framework which I am doing. If you change, this is the risk and the return. Yes, random variables. Now the issue is that I need to find out the weights. So if I do the weights, again they are very haphazard. So I do not have the what are the actual. This is basically most probably for the BSc. Yes. So in some cases initially it was almost evenly distributed. Then as you start increasing your risk return profile, some of the stocks start dominating because their returns for per unit increase of the risk is much better. So obviously people will try to buy that. So if TCS is there with respect to the other company, or Infosys is there, and in Infosys risk return profile is much better, that means you are getting per unit return or return based on per unit risk is much better, people will try to invest in that. So that's why it starts dominating. So other stocks basically lose out. Now this is number of data points are not very large. If you see, it basically is a Pareto front based on your profile of the risk and return which you have. Actually the diagram should have been this, but if I have been able to do more simulation, it would have given me some results. So with the rebalancing the transaction cost concept, if I try to find out the Pareto front plots, then the portfolio returns minus the transaction cost for buying and transaction cost for selling, if you balance it with the portfolio risk, you will basically have so more you want, obviously you have to basically compensate on the other front. And obviously it can be done for different betas. Now I have a very simple optimization problem where is a maximization of return and minimization risk. I am changing the objective function. Similarly, I change the constraints accordingly. So in this case, the returns of the final case would be greater than the initial investment. If you look here, this is again the same as we had in the second constraint. The third one is same as the third constraint here, and the weights are equal to 1, and the weights are between Wi minimum and Wi maximum. You can change it accordingly. So this portion I have not been able to explain, but if you basically now see the risk return profile, it is much more as should be theoretically. So for lower risk, obviously it doesn't, you have a kink here where it's again start changing, but generally it behaves in a very well defined manner for the risk return profile. So again, if you change the beta values means you take the probability here with different values of beta 1 and beta 2, take 90, 90, 95, 95, 97, 97, and you again solve it using the reliability framework. You will have different such curves which are overlapping each other, such that for any level of beta means the perception which I have over the market, you can basically modulate accordingly. So these weights are not very nice, but I thought I'll just let you know. So these are in the initial stages, the weights are fluctuating, then one starts dominating. So obviously everybody would try to put the weights accordingly. Depending on the data, how clean it is, I think we should get better results. So this is the risk return on the Pareto optimal front for the function F1 and F2. F1, F2 is basically this one. The returns which I put for myself and the risk which I put for myself. So they basically compensate each other. So if I plot this, it becomes a Pareto optimality front. Then I have maximum the return on the threshold. Some threshold means over and above the threshold which you have set for yourself with respect to the variance. Again, this is return being greater than RP star. I have not considered anything with the variance, and this being the returns being greater than the initial value. So you can put again a probability here or a here, but I only am considering the probability for the returns and the risk. If you plot it again for one value of beta, I get a risk return profile. Risk return profile means I am getting from the weights and then trying to basically multiply that with respect to the returns and find out the risks and then plot it. The weights are coming out this. So again, I don't remember, I have to just find it out. For the DAX, one of them starts dominating and then you have the risk return profile.
So, is there any way to estimate the betas, the perception of the market?
This beta would not depend on the, don't confuse this beta with the market beta. These beta are your risk perception about the market.
Yes, if you have such information, is there any way to
Yes, if I am much more well aware of the market conditions, my level of beta would be much higher than yours. If the set of information which you have, based on which you are trying to find out the market price, is very low, so your beta values would be very low. This beta, again I am mentioning, this is not the market beta, this is the beta of the risk perception which you have about the market. This will depend on your case. How can I dictate your beta, or how can you dictate my beta? You cannot. Based on that. So again I have the risk return profile, I have the Pareto optimal front for the DAX. So initially this was for basically for the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. The first model was for the BSE, second model for the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, third model was basically this one, maximum threshold was basically for the Dow Jones DAX. Okay, now I'll basically show you, I'll only show the results, the final one. The problem is very simply, you are doing the robust optimization now. The problem, this nomenclature are exactly the same. The problem is like this. I want to minimize my one form of risk, which is the conditional valued risk, which you use in finance, and I want to maximize my return. So minimization of minus is basically maximization. Now you see there is a constraints based on the probability. They look complicated, but they are not. So this is basically conditional value of risk constraint, and this is the return constraint. This beta 1 and beta 2 which I was talking about are the betas which I basically fix. So you will fix a different beta, I will fix a different beta. So that will depend on the level of risk which you have. The weights add up to 1. I am using X in place of W, and the summation of the weightages which I am going to put for the weightages for the multi-objectives can change. I am putting, if I think returns are very good, so obviously I will put more weightages. If I think risk is very important, I will put more weightages for the risk. And this weightages can be negative also, but keeping into mind that the sum of the weights is 1, as given in the second last point here. So I take, here I take different stocks. I take the Australian one, Brazilian one, French, German, English, which is the Financial Times, Canadian one, Hang Seng, then Argentina, Nikkei, then NSE. I don't take the BSE, and the Singapore one. So I take a 10 years data with 2840 data points. Again I do the same thing, find out the nominal values, shifting windows. Shifting windows means this diagram which I have shown, this one. So I take the nominal values if the distribution is not given. If the distribution is given, I take the theoretical mean value. So these are the sample statistics. So here I am using a non-normal distribution. I use the extreme value distribution and take the minimum and the maximum. So these are some of the statistics which I report for that 10-year data point. These are just from the data. Now I do some normality plots, kernel plots, in order to find out whether they are normal or not. So this green one, if you see, these are the normality plots, but in some of the cases they are extremely on to the right or the left, depending on whether you are taking the maximum of the return or the minimum of the return. If it is loss or profit, they are skewed on to the right or the left. That comes out. So this is most probably done for the DAX. So it will basically be there for all the cases. You do the normality checks and so on and so forth. So this is one of the detailed non-normal plots for DAX. For as a stock, so we basically see it's basically more flatter onto the left. There are some stocks which are more flatter onto the right, that is skewed. So these are some of the data description for the QQ plots. So I am doing the theoretical normal plots, I am doing the theoretical EVD plots. So I need to check whether the mean value is normal or EVD, whether the standard deviation is normal or EVD, because I need to take the nominal values and the perturbations accordingly. These are again maybe for DAX, if I am not mistaken. Again I approach the same concept of shifting window. Windows size are different, overlappings are different. This I am just giving as a figure. So this is L is the length window. There are some there are overlaps and they also shift. So what is the shifts, what in the overlaps, they can be changed accordingly. Then I run it for model 1 and model 2. These are the mean values. As I do the bootstrapping, I get the mean values for the standard deviation and the mean values. So these are the models which I am talking about. So one model is this. So these are the constraints I am again mentioning with a probability this beta 1, beta 2 would change. Now which is very interesting is that in a 3D diagram as I plot for different values of beta, my level of risk, which is the beta 1, beta 2 which I had. So if you look at this diagram, it's not possible for me to basically rotate the diagram and show, but if you look at it, they are overlapping envelopes. So you have basically the light blue being overshadowed by the red one, being overshadowed by the green one, and the final one is the highest beta one, which is the dark blue one. So at any level of risk and return, if the betas are different, obviously if sigma is fixed, return will be different, or if return is fixed, beta would be different. So the graph would look something like, if you do in the 2D framework, the graph would look like this. If you look at any one of the direction, either you are looking from here or orthogonal. So this is the risk and this is the return. So the graphs are like this. For different betas. This I am putting the best fit line, but they are collection of points. So consider this is beta 2, beta 1, beta 3 and beta 4. So what it actually means is this: if I have a person or I have a sets of persons who have different values of beta depending on the risk return profile, so if you draw a vertical line for the same value of risk, the human being depending on the beta value will have different returns. If I draw a horizontal line, so the human beings would have different risk depending on the beta values. So you can basically plot it accordingly. So these are done for the different risk measures and the return measures. So I plot return and CVAR, one level of risk on the x-axis, y-axis, and the y and z-axis I draw the other risk, which is VAR. So there are 3D plots for outer sample, in sample. So I basically check them accordingly. So they have been about 50,000 points based on which I draw. So this model can be done for any different type of areas depending on how you do it. So with this is the one, these codes are available, but only that you have to basically make them converted to your problem, whatever it is there. They can be easily done in C or C++ would be the best, but it is actually a basic language. You have to really do a very thorough programming. MATLAB library functions are there, you can build up and work it accordingly. So you can basically use the NSGA2 or the particle swarm optimization or whatever to solve the multi-objective point, and this reliability framework you do it on your own, merge them. So as you do the reliability part, come into the multi-objective, solve it, find out the X, then go to the U frame, U plane, and basically go to an N4 till you basically reach the optimality. Okay. So with this I'll end this lecture. Any questions which are there, I'll be willing to answer either now or after the class is over on a personal basis. Okay. Thank you very much for being a part of this program. I'm sure it will be a good learning process with you all, and let's keep in touch. I'm sure it can be taken further. Thank you.